Hello everyone, this is Abigail with Sparkle and Shine Guidance, and here are some top things that I want you to know about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and then I'm going to go into house by house detail for you. I'm going to talk about some historical context for why I think these are the top 3 things that I want you to know about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we're going to be having. That's really going to come into effect when Saturn moves into Aries this Friday, February 13th. Okay, so I don't want to talk too long about this because I have other videos where I talk about Saturn and Neptune's energy, but let's really quickly touch on Saturn and Neptune's energy because we have to. Saturn is all about form, constriction. It can be pressure. When you go through your Saturn return, it's very pressurized, as well as your Saturn squares and your Saturn oppositions that not as many people talk about, but I think are more challenging than the Saturn return. Saturn takes a while to develop, takes time to develop, maturity. It's all about the work that you're here to do on this planet and the pressure around that. It's very much like the stern daddy of the zodiac, just making you do the things that you don't necessarily always want to do. It's all about responsibility. It rules our bones and our structure. It's very much about the rigidness. It also rules the time of year where it's the darkest and the coldest. Neptune, however, has to do with the higher octave of Venus. It is like the dreamiest of the dream. It is we call it like the spiritual lube of the zodiac. It is like where things come from. It's where many people find inspiration. When you look at a lot of artists and musicians, they have a strong influence of Neptune in their chart where they're channeling from spirit. And on the flip side, it can be addiction, it can be delusion, it can be the extreme of that. Neptune is very much about the collective consciousness. It has to do with the collective consciousness. It is way out there. Saturn's closer in. Saturn has to do with the social structures, and it's a social planet. It is closer in and it has more power because of that. However, with this conjunction in particular, Saturn's debilitated. And so you want to pay attention to that because Neptune does have more power in this particular Saturn-Neptune conjunction. That is going to first talk about the top 3 things. If you just want to get to business, you don't really want to know more than that. You just want to know the top 3 things to know about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Well, the first thing to know is that this is the most important time to repair and fix any energy leaks, any leaking of energy. Now, in general, just to notice where you're leaking energy currently, where you can be taken advantage of, where things might find a way in. And I'll talk more about why that's important, but for now, that's what I want to say. Pay attention to your energy leaks, repair, regenerate, bring your energy back to yourself. Notice in your home, in your community, in your personal life, in your love life, with your children, what are the energy leaks? Let's repair. The second thing I want you to know is that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening in the first minutes of Aries. That means that it's represented in the I Ching as the place of innocence. It is where we are born. It's like seeing the world with fresh new eyes. And because of this, it's important to come back to that innocence instead of battering yourself up about being human. Our innate innocence has to do with having love and compassion for all beings and doing no harm. So noticing where in your life, maybe even from a place you thought was from love, you're actually causing harm to others or coming at others from a place of hate. Because, like I said, innocence right now. Innocence. And trusting your innocence is going to get you to many more places. I don't want to go too much into popular culture and all of the weird things that are happening right now, but it was very evident in the Super Bowl performance that it was amplifying this idea of innocence and the loss of innocence. And what I want to remind you is that as long as you are a human being, you always have the opportunity to come back to your birthright as an innocent being. And that innocent being is a being that has love for themselves and for others. So remember that as you're moving forward. The third thing that I want you to know is that this conjunction is not a set moment in time. It was happening in 2025. It's going to continue to happen in 2026. And when I deep dove into the other historical times, and Neptune is very slow moving. It is the collective consciousness. It represents that outer consciousness, that deep inner consciousness, but it's so deep in there that it's kind of farther away from a personal planet. The personal planets are very fast moving and very personal to your life. Neptune is very far out and is very slow moving. So it's more of a collective and a slower moving thing. Saturn is one of the social planets. It's slower moving, but it's not as slow as Neptune. And because of that, it typically has more potency with a Saturn-Neptune. It's different because Saturn is debilitated here. Now, that's important to note because in other time periods where we've had this conjunction, it happens every 36 years, but it happens in different signs, right? In different places in the zodiac. And this one in particular is happening in Aries where Saturn is debilitated. So it's important to note that because some of the more extreme things that have happened that have been very like top-down structural authority based have been when Saturn is exalted, like in Capricorn or something, okay? This time, actually, Neptune has more power, and that isn't always a good thing. I think that, to me, that represents a lot more of natural occurrences happening. When I say that, it's a little tricky to talk about weather, because there's also weather modification, but in general, more weather things, I guess I will say, with the Neptune being stronger. Whereas with Saturn, there's a lot more in historical references, more of top-down authority violence. Okay, so that's the last time that this happened was in 1989. 1989, what a year. The Great Berlin Wall fell. The end of the Cold War was represented by that. There was also a lot of weird things around fears of spreading things. Like, for instance, it was in the media, all over the media, because Princess Diana shook hands with someone who was HIV positive. So during that time in the Okay, so let's get into some historical context. I'm going to talk about the last time that this conjunction happened, and then I'm also going to go way back to the last time that this happened in Aries. Okay, so that was a long time ago. But the last time that this happened was 1989. Some of us were alive then. And there was a lot happening around that time. That was the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War. That was also a time when there was a lot of weird explosions, weird collisions, gas leaks that caused collisions, gas leaks that caused explosions. This was also in Colombia, tons of stuff coming up in bombings where the drug cartel was fighting against the government. Just tons. I was very shocked because it wasn't in Aries, and there were lots of explosions. There was lots of collisions, and that was interesting to me because what that year really showed up. There was a huge train explosion from a gas leak in Russia. 800 people were injured, 645 people were killed. There was also issues with fog, Neptune, and that causing plane crashes. There was a mass murder in Stockton, California. There were earthquakes, tornadoes worldwide. There was the overcrowded stadium issue in England that 94 people died in. There was fear, as I said, when we were talking about watch your leaky, energy, seal it up, because there's this thing with Neptune where it's like leaks, perceived spreading. And so Princess Diana shook hands with someone in 1989, which was a big deal, who had tested positive for HIV. And everyone, right, was up in arms about this because the fear was there that it was going to be spread that way. And so very Neptunian, okay? And Saturn to some extent. So the things that are done are riots, crackdowns, aggravated workers, strikes, collisions, spreading of information. Oh, this was interesting. I think it was in Paris. 41,000 people received in the mail things to show up for court for heinous crimes when they just had traffic violations. Like there was some mix up in the records. And so all these people received things for like showing up for murder, or showing up for these horrible crimes. And it was just a mistake in their system where they spread all these things out to people that caused a lot of fear, when in actuality there was no reason to be afraid and there was no crime. That's very Saturn Neptune. In Australia, that was the biggest hot air balloon disaster, which I found interesting because that was like another example of gas spread, right? Like how hot air balloons work, very Neptunian. Also, there was a battleship found from the Second World War, which felt very Neptunian to me. So these kinds of themes, and again, it wasn't just in 1 month, it wasn't just in 1 week, this was in like the whole time. So for a year and a half, that this was all happening. It very much has to do with the dissolving of systems, or systems really fighting back and trying to gain their power back by being very authoritarian. Excuse me, especially if Saturn is exalted. So themes that just look out for, right? Like being really cautious of your water. If there's this feeling like you need to test things, like testing your water. If you have a well, I definitely recommend testing your water in this year. There's also a theme around making sacrifices to thrive. So releasing old beliefs or releasing old energies that need to be released so that you can thrive. Okay, this is totally random, but I found this very interesting. In 1989 was when The Simpsons started. And I don't know if you know the etymology of Simpsons, which goes back to Simon, which goes back to he has heard or listening. So there's all sorts of conspiracy theories, and now some proven things about the people involved in The Simpsons. And it was created during the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And now we see, like, in these years, how not only, like, whatever the reality is around the creator of that, and how horrific, things are shown in there that actually came to be, just the influence and like mind numbing it is that it influenced so many people, like so many people. And I would say like worldwide, it's not just in America. So that was interesting to me. And so going back even further, the last time that Saturn and Neptune were conjunct in Aries was 1703. And 1703 had much more of an influence on weather. As I mentioned, the worst storm in history was recorded in 1703. There were a lot of things happening with taking over or like overthrowing the government, fighting against, there's some, rebellion against the English. There was a lot happening, okay? But those things, again, just in a quick glance of what I can see, obviously we have a lot more records. Like, obviously we know a lot more about what's happening in 1989 than we do in 1703. But the things we do know about 1703 is there were some big storms that I've just told you all the negatives. Let's get into the positives. There's so much around Saturn that is about retribution and about revelations. So Saturn and Aries in particular is about these things of innocence. There's going to be a lot of focus on those that are working against innocence, or those that have been working against innocence for a long time, coming into justice or coming into retribution awareness in the collective. So that is a huge positive. There's so much of a need for discernment because there's going to be a lot of hecticness and craziness in 2026. And I think that it's so important to have your own discernment and have your own ways of grounding and taking care of yourself and tending to your own energy. I have a workshop coming up on the day where this conjunction is exact, all about taking your vision into your embodiment through vision boarding and through a visualization that I do. The time of the Lunar New Year, it's a very potent time to be doing this work. So if you want to join me, the link is below and you can check out all about that workshop that's coming up. Okay, so let's get into the house by house, shall we? The first few degrees of Aries is in your birth chart. So you're going to want to look for that Aries symbol, just like this. First few degrees of that Aries symbol are going to show you what house that's in. And then it's also going to show you if you have personal planets there. If you have personal planets there, I highly recommend working with an astrologer like myself or someone else that can help you understand, because it's a huge time. So let's talk about if this is happening in your first house. Your first house is your identity. And so when Saturn and Neptune are coming together in your first house, this really has to do with a breakthrough around your identity and maybe breaking free from some past restrictions. Saturn coming into new beliefs, Neptune, spiritual beliefs about yourself and your identity. This is a really great time for you to do that grounding work, working with your root chakra, your safety in being here, and your safety in sharing who you are and your identity with whoever you want to. This is happening in your second house, Saturn, Neptune, early degrees of Aries in your second house. This is about a huge evolution. Second house has to do with your resources, your finances, but also your morals and your values and what you believe and what you have inside you and what you value inside you and in others. This can be a time of paying attention to any energy leaks in your money and reworking your money story. This also can have to do with being with something from your past that has caused you sorrow in the past, but now you need to change and transform into something more positive for the future. You're leaking energy into the past, or you're leaking energy into your sorrows, and instead we're going to transform that into the evolution of your resources and going within to really transform and transcend and get into a better place with your money and your values and your resources. Third house is a realignment that's happening around what you're sharing, who you're sharing things with. Are you oversharing? Are you oversharing? Looking at your relationships to your siblings, to your community, who you share close contact with, and improvising, realigning, maybe sharing more, who knows? I don't know what your reality is, but something about the sharing is coming up. Either you've been sharing with the wrong people and now you need to share with different people, or you have been oversharing, now you need to keep some things private, or you've been too private and you need to share some things. Either any one of those. Fourth house is all about infusing your home life with more playfulness, with more ease, with more of that Neptunian, just sensory, spiritual, we say Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So there's this like re-beautifying your home, creating more playfulness in your home. Maybe you've come to a place where you haven't been doing the things that you love in your home. There's certain things that you love to do that you haven't been doing. This is the time to come back to those things. Look into different possibilities around your living situation or your idea of home. And maybe there's some healing there from your childhood, but also it could be just in your home now that there's a need for you to create more of like the hearth. And the idea with the hearth is that we keep that fire burning bright in our homes to be inviting to ourselves and to our creativities. Are you doing that? Do you need to do that more? What needs to happen around that? Have Saturn and Neptune conjuncting in your 5th house. That means Aries' first few degrees is in your 5th house. Whew, this is all about your creativity getting a reboot, new awarenesses, new areas of success in your creativity and your creations. I mean, 5th house can also be about like, you know, making the babies. This can also be about your hobbies, your leisure time, new romance. Now, I want you to keep in mind that I talked about in another video about this kind of like idea of a Neptune being like, can be kind of swampy. There can be this idea of the swamp. And 5th house, we want to make sure you're not creating in a place that is unclear to you of where it's going. So having a longer term vision for your creations, all kinds of creations, your romance, your children, your hobbies, your leisure. Like, you know, maybe you're doing some hobby that long term you're not going to be able to do. Like, you're going to injure yourself and you're not going to be able to do that anymore. It's really going to bum you out. You're going to be really depressed. So you got to think longer term. So this idea of the swamp is like, where do you need to come into your purity, your innocence around what's going to work for you long term, but also where things got a little murky around your creations and you need to get some clarity. Okay. I don't know why I just went on that tangent, but this might be a good placement to work with me because I don't know. There's something there. There's something there, maybe. 6th house. 6th house is all about your health, your well-being, your day-to-day rituals. This is very much about tending to your body, your mind, your spirit, and your work in the world, your daily work in the world. And there's something about your expression that's needing to come through your day-to-day work. Maybe it's gotten monotonous or boring, and there's this need for things to be spiced up a little bit. There's a need for a big change. There's a need for maybe turning a page or a different corner, going a different way. This has to do with your connection to the earth, because there's definitely something in the 6th house where it's like how you're tending to yourself in the day-to-day and how you're connecting into the world around you day-to-day. And so where does this need to shift? Where are you needing new ways of connecting? There's just something that needs to really flip a different way in order for you to find that richness in connecting to yourself again. 7th house. If you have Saturn and Neptune conjunct in your 7th house, this is a house of partnership. Now, it's not just marriage. It can be anything that you're in contract with. So it could be, again, a marriage. It could be a business partnership. It could be anyone you have a contract with, really. And this is all about your sourcing, shifting your sourcing from being so reliant on a partner to self-reliance, awarenesses, ahas around where you have been searching for freedom in all the wrong places, or where you've been searching for acceptance in all the wrong places. And this is a time for you to go deep within and resource that acceptance and that love and that Neptunian Venusian dreaminess into your life again. And Saturn creates the form for that. So where do you need to create form in this new way of being in the world? 8th house. If you have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happening in your 8th house, this is really a time of possibilities for you. There's really a lot of possibilities, but that can also be overwhelming. And because this house it's a watery house on its own, and it has to do with sex, death, taxes, other people's resources, other people's values, there can be this confusion around what you need and what what you need versus what other people need from you, and really trying to get straight on that. And so one way that you can do this is by slowing down and taking the space that you need to listen to your own internal voice and shift into a balance more than just over giving, looking at those leaky boundaries and really creating some form, Saturn, for yourself around a practice of being able to be a little bit fluid with some of your boundaries while maintaining your boundaries. Ninth house. Ninth house is all about expansion on its own. It is the house of Jupiter. It's travel, it's expansion, it's higher learning. This could be a time where you're thinking about transforming into a new career, learning something new. This is really about fresh starts, blank pages, letting yourself really come to a place of freshness. Having Aries in the ninth house is a lot about your spark and being allowed to expand your spark. So however you're going to do that, make sure that you do it with a sense of understanding, Saturn, that things might take time. It might feel like, oh, I'm so excited about this thing, I'm just going to let myself explore it. And that's great and wonderful. And sometimes things are slow to develop, or we need to give them a lot more energy and time than maybe we want to. And allowing yourself to be patient with that process and starting fresh. Getting in your 10th house, this is all about your vocation, your presence in the world, how people see you, your authority in the world. And this is about a shift in the way that you're presenting yourself and the way that you're showing up in the world and the energy that you bring to a room, and really owning your energy, owning, the shift in your authority. And it might be tricky. It might be really hard for you. This is another good placement to work with me. Understanding that you just need to know yourself and know your worth. No one else needs to understand you and the moves that you're making. You're going to be making some power moves in the next year, and that's good. That's really good. Not everybody will understand what you're doing, and it's good to get some reflection from trusted sources and limit the rest. 11th house. 11th house has to do with your community, like the larger community, social media, the future, our social networks, any kind of network that you're part of, the larger society. And there's this ripe opportunity for you to move into the future, to really present yourself into the future. Pay attention to the hits that you're getting intuitively about what that is, and move with confidence and move with security, because you're bringing something forward and it's going to seem to come out of thin air. You're bringing things forward that need to be brought forward, and it's not always going to be comfortable. Much like the 10th house, a lot of people are not going to understand you and understand the shifts that you're making. However, this is about you and this is about your future. And so really make the decisions that you need to make for your future self now. 12th house. 12th house is about slowing down and listening. The 12th house is about solitude. The 12th house is about your connection with God and source energy and discernment around that. I see this as really a big time for you to create some new practice that's going to feed your spirit and feed your soul in a positive way, feed your connection with God, goddess, source, and nature, whatever. And there's something about this that Neptune is really strengthened here. So it's really important for you to understand what Neptune's bringing. It's bringing form to the formless. And this is happening in your totally formless house. And so the shifts and the discipline that you're going to be creating for yourself might not be seen by others. It might not even be seen by yourself. It might be things that are shifting in your life that you don't even know. You're making different choices. You're showing up differently. You're creating space for your spirit and yourself. And it might be happening without you even needing to give it much attention. So that's kind of cool. and making sure that you're journaling and writing down some of the things that you're noticing and you're continuing to notice, because I think looking back, this is going to be a very rich time, very creative time. There's a lot coming through, just like 11th house. So these all like play into each other, right? And so keeping a journal, keeping a dream journal too, because there's probably a lot shifting for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and follow if this content helped you. And if you want to book with me one-on-one, use code GOFURTHER through Saturn Day to save 15%. And join me next week for that live workshop. The link is also below. Take good care. Bye-bye.